All right, guys, we're gonna talk about slab building in regard to candle holder making. So when you start a slab, you always want a wedge. So while I'm doing this, you guys should be preparing your clay stations and showing me your view. Jamie's got a nice view over there. So you guys make sure you get your clay out so that you can get your participation points today. So this piece of clay was in my bag and I wanted to have a little bit more clay, so what I did was I added some water to it and I began the wedging process. So this should be really familiar to you guys. You guys have a video about wedging. Wedging has to happen no matter what style you're using in building. All right, so definitely wedge your clay before you start, and then we want to get to something like this, which is an even rolled slab. So what you do is you pinch it down with your hands. Okay, so I'm just going to squeeze it down, and it's going to be like getting close to a 1/4 inch or so. Okay, so when I'm squeezing my slab, this should feel like a review for most of you. Okay, I'm going to squeeze it down. Then I'm going to think about my depth finders, in this case, are pencils. So I'm just going to move this slab here out of my way for a moment. I'll bring it back into view in a little bit. Okay, so when I'm doing my slab, I look for what I have that can be a depth finder, and I have 2 pencils. You guys might have other things at home that would work well, like maybe you guys have 3 sticks. I'm not really sure what you have at home, but you need to be creative and find something that's about a 1/4 inch in height and it's the same height on both sides. Okay, then maybe a rolling pin or a stick. Okay, now if your rolling pin is made out of granite or some kind of really slick surface, you might want to consider wrapping it in fabric or paper so that you don't get a lot of stuck clay to it. So in my last rolling demo, my clay was a little bit too wet and it wasn't wedged enough, so that's why I got clay stuck to my stick there. So when you're rolling a slab, those pencils or whatever the object is that has the depth even on both sides is what keeps it from going too far, and it also helps create that consistent slab. So I'm rolling the slab out. Okay, so again, slab rolling, you can tell that that piece of clay needed to be wedged a little bit longer there because it's stuck to my slab stick. So if that happens to you, that's the problem. You just need to wedge it a little bit more. Okay, as a solution for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the pencils and I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to start rolling the opposite side because I know it was there on the fabric, and the fabric, I think a lot of you guys are using an old t-shirt. The fabric is taking some of the excess water, which is making it easier to roll. Okay, so if you have any clay stuck on your rolling pin like I do, you'll want to get it off, otherwise it's going to create imperfections and indentations in your clay. Okay, we'll be using a slab like this to make our candle holder. So our candle holder is a cylinder, so I'm going to show a cylinder in this video here. This bottle here is a cylinder, so it's basically made from a rectangle that's turned onto itself. Okay, when you're getting ready to cut a rectangle out of your slab, okay, I'm bringing back into view my larger slab, you want to have something pre-measured. Okay, so what I have that's pre-measured is a piece of cardboard. Okay, now the height will be the shorter side and the diameter will be the longer side. Might be better to describe that as circumference. Okay, so this is actually going to turn into the cylinder. So you guys can measure it carefully or you can estimate it. Really makes no difference to me what you plan to do there. But what I think I'll do is I'll use my popsicle stick as a cutting tool, and I'll cut a slab evenly from this pre-measured piece of cardboard. And I'd like it to be a little bit longer. As I've been creating a few days, I've decided that I want it to be longer. Okay, so I'm just going to flip this over and I'm going to extend it so I can get the longest rectangle possible out of this slab that I have rolled here. Okay, so I'm going to end up with this rectangle and then extra pieces of clay. So what we do with extra pieces of clay, we wedge and prep them. Okay, so if I'm going to be wedging this, I'm going to turn it right back into a pliable piece of clay, and I'll add some water to the center of it before I bag it. I'll roll it back up, and I'll just store it in an airtight bag until I'm ready to use it again so it doesn't dry during my creation time. I'll set that aside. Okay, Then I have my beautiful little slab here, okay? If it begins to get dry, what I like to do is with a spray bottle, spray and add water. You guys might have a spray bottle with pure regular water on your ironing board maybe, okay? I saw a student yesterday take an old hairspray bottle and they just made themselves a little bottle and labeled it for clay making. That's fine. If you don't have a spray bottle, you can always just dip your fingers in and work that way, okay? So that just keeps it pliable so that I can work. Sometimes I need to use temporary armature. Temporary armature for me a lot of times in clay is a piece of paper, but I saw one of your classmates last period doing something else. They wrapped a cylinder, something else, could have been a hairspray bottle, and they used that to help them form their cylinder. So I randomly grabbed this cleaner from my desk, and it's a little bit large, so it doesn't really fit. So something like that works pretty well too if you want to go down that road. You're certainly welcome to. In fact, I'll demonstrate like that today, okay? So I'll use my hand sanitizer bottle as a temporary armature. So armature is a word that you should get comfortable with as a sculptor, okay? What it means is it's something in your sculpture that gives it strength, okay? So this is a temporary armature, okay? And this is temporary because I plan to remove it, all right? So the most important part of today's lesson is slipping and scoring. So at this point, my rectangle here is a bit too large, okay? I'm not gonna get super specific. I'm actually gonna eyeball this a little bit. And I'm going to plan to cut that piece off, okay? So whenever I've measured that out and I decided how much I need to trim, I can trim it easily like this. Then we go into a bit of review where we're using a slip and score method to attach things, okay? So slipping and scoring, what is this, okay? This is where you're adding score or scratch marks to your piece of work. So in this case, I'm scratching. I like to scratch in an angle. And then crosshatch another scratch in an opposing angle. And notice that these are not just like little baby scratches. I've actually taken this toothpick and I've scratched into my clay, okay? So I don't want to get overly aggressive with it, but I certainly want to get some scratch marks that make sense, okay? So now I'm going to show this method here where I'm literally attaching one into another. Okay, so I'm going to put the same score marks on this side. Okay, you'll notice that you have different coordination than I do. All of your minds are working to connect with your fingertips in different ways. Okay, we're not obviously the same person, so your coordinated method and mine, they might not be identical, and that's okay as long as you're taking the concept and you're applying it in such a way that it's fundamentally correct. Okay, so I've got score marks here. And then I have score marks on my opposite side where I'm attaching, okay? I need now to add what's called slip, and slip is liquefied clay, okay? So in this bowl, I have clay, and I've squished it up. I put it in my water, and I squished it up until it's the consistency of toothpaste. This is what you need, okay? The viscosity or consistency needs to be a like toothpaste. And you're going to smear it into the cracks. Now don't be the person that's under the assumption because you have slip on one side, when it touches the other, it will of course enter the scratch marks on the other side. That may be true, but it's probably not going to be enough to create the firm bond that we need. All right, so what you want to do is you want to apply it liberally into the scratches or the score marks on both sides, okay? Then you want to use pressure from your fingertips to press those two together, okay? So I'm actually really liking this method of working with the paper on this bottle here because it's making it a little bit easier for me to make a cylinder, okay? So live and learn. I probably should have showed this method the first day because I think this is going to be something you're going to be quite successful with, okay? So on the other hand, I don't want you to be limited to the objects around you, and I want you to learn to come up with creative ways to make that happen for yourself in whatever size that you want to make it. So I've got a seam and it's been essentially welded or glued together in the slip and score method, but now I have to score and blend it, okay? So this seam should be invisible, okay? I should not be able to see it later. So I'm going to go ahead and work like the Dr. Frankenstein, and I'm going to stitch this guy together here. I don't know why all my sculptures tend to have male genders, but this one does. So this guy here is getting blended together, okay? And I am going to liberally apply the slip and continue moving forward until I think that it's pretty perfect, okay? You'll have days where things aren't going well, like you're looking around your sculpture and you're like, wow, I have a crack, or my clay needed to be wedged better, and that may be okay. You might work for an entire day and come up with a project, and then you look at it and you're like, wow, I could do better, and you start over, okay? It's just part of it, all right? Look at how this is slipping, okay? It's sliding right over that pretty well. I don't think it's quite firm enough to pull out yet, but it's definitely going to come out of there when I'm ready for that to happen. So I told you it wasn't firm enough, and then I yanked it out of there. All right, well, such is life. I got this paper stuck in here. Look at that beautiful cylinder here. All right, so that's really nice. At this point, we're going to create a bottom for it. Okay, so I'm going to pull in that slab that I had earlier. Okay, and I'll trace the bottom from another slab. If your cylinder is not in a state where it can stand and not lose its shape, obviously leave it on the other object for a little bit longer, okay? So the temporary armature for me was this bottle here. For you, in some cases, it might just be a wadded up piece of paper, so I'll try to demonstrate that for you in the video here. If I wanted to cram this piece of paper inside of here and I felt like that gave it enough strength to keep it alive for me for a little while, that works too, okay? So go slow. Usually demonstrations are a little bit elusive in the fact that they happen so quickly, okay? This little line that I drew here only indicates where I plan to scratch, okay? So I'm gonna scratch the score marks where my attachment will happen. I'm going really fast. You guys don't have to do these perfect. Some of my students, you guys are amazing. Like, they just want to be so perfect at everything, and that's great, okay? But some things don't require that perfection, and this is one of them. You just need to have some liberal scratch marks that are going to help you to attach this. So I like using a pencil to cut my clay. If you don't like using a pencil, use something else. Basically, you just need something that will penetrate the clay and give you an absolutely perfect seam. So I'm going around this, and I'm going to get a slab that matches the bottom. Okay, now I already took that step forward, and I went ahead and I did my score marks because I knew I had to do them. That just comes from the experience of building. Okay, so I've got this nice little matching slab. I can get rid of this. I don't think I want to wad it up just yet because I might use it. And I'm going to attach this bottom part to this piece here. Okay, so I'm going to scratch all along the surface of it. And right now my diagonal scratch marks, these scoring marks, have not been hatched yet. A hatching mark is one that opposes the mark that you place down. So if you put it on a 45-degree angle to the left, you might want to go 45-degree angle to the right and scratch that up. Okay, so now I've got plenty of score marks on this and on this. If you're looking at it and you're like, man, I better add a few more, more is usually better. They're going to take liquefied clay inside of them, and then that clay will bond to the clay on the other side and create a nice solid weld. All right, so as you're going along this, you're trying to intentionally create a weld that will last forever. All right, these projects, you guys are only going to turn in 2 projects this school year for me. Okay, so in the 2021 spring semester, you're just going to turn in 2 clay projects. So keep that in mind as you're building as far as scale. Okay, and just make sure that you're able to get 2 projects out of it. I'm going to fit that on there. I'm using a slight bit of pressure with my hands just to hold that down. Okay, and I think I'm going to go ahead and blend this. So blend it to the sides while holding it in my non-dominant hand. Okay, so I'm going to stitch. Okay, thinking about, I like to discuss the Dr. Frankenstein here. So you're thinking about stitching one piece to the next. Don't be lazy and just do it in a couple places. You know, some artists and art teachers and stuff, they'll be like, yeah, don't go to all that bother, don't do that. I like to take the extra step of doing it because I want to make sure that my piece survives its firing process and lasts, because these ceramic objects can last hundreds of years, okay? So when we put them in the kiln and they go through this vitrification process, they're actually changing their molecular composition and they're becoming ceramic, okay? And you guys are in an advanced class, so you probably realize that, whereas some of the beginning students, they might not realize that right away. That's okay, okay? But the more scoring and blending and perfecting that you do, the happier you're going to be with your product. Okay, now you guys are the first group of students that I've done a candle holder with, so I expect to see something functional, and I do want to see some negative spaces, okay? So this candle holder as it is now, it doesn't have any designs in it. I kind of skipped that in the process of the demo. So I'm going to leave that open-ended for you. I want you to look for some kind of a design that you can put through it, okay? Maybe you have several flowers or you have different triangles. Whatever it is that you're doing, just make sure that it looks nice. So your fingers are nice tools if you want to go along it and you want to dip them in water so that they slide over it nicely. You can certainly do that. But this is essentially the basis for how to create a functional cylinder. Now, if this is going to be like a tea light holder, you might create a little door here on the bottom. But I'd like to see some designs or some negative spaces coming from this rectangle. As far as the production manner of that, while this slab was flat, okay, I'll just do a mini demo for you so I can talk about design as quickly as possible so you guys aren't watching hours and hours of film. Let's say I had my slab down here on the bottom and I wanted to do, see if I can get a little mini slab, kind of getting ahead of myself here. Let's say I wanted to do some kind of a design out of this while it was down. I think when you go to fold it up, it's going to be really weak and it might not stand up for you all that well until it's in this state here, okay? But you might be able to draw or design your plan on the slab early. So let's say you measured it all out and you drew some flowers or something that you plan to cut, okay? Maybe you're even using another tool to give like a hole, okay? So let's say you plan to put a round circle there or something like that. And then you have some kind of other design on the other side, okay? You're going to need spaces that are positive between, and then the negative spaces that you cut out, you might be able to do that while it's standing, but you could pre-draw them on the slab while it's flat, just so that they're easier to find when you stand it up. So you'd be doing this cutting when it's standing upright as opposed to cutting it like this and folding it together all at the same time, because what's going to end up happening is these points here are going to get weak, and then you might deal with all this patching and breaking, whereas if you just draw it, you draw whatever design you're going to have on there, and then you cut it out from this with a toothpick or some other tool, that would work pretty well. All right, so this video is 18 minutes long and the bell rang, so I'm going to stop it. I hope it's a helpful video for you. I feel like it went pretty well.